Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Julie Raz. I'm the Sales Director for the Tola region at Impetus. I will be your host for today's session. Before we begin today's webinar, I have a few housekeeping announcements I'd like to go over. All of our attendees will be on mute. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat panel. And also, this session will be recorded for those of you who are unable to attend. So now let's go ahead and introduce today's speakers. First, we have Ayush Jain, Technical Architect at Impetus Technologies. Ayush has 11 years of experience designing and implementing ETL and enterprise data solutions. He has deep expertise in architecting and managing cloud migration projects and has built several best-in-class accelerators to help customers embrace the cloud. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ayush. And we also have Enrud, the Senior Technical Architect for Impetus Technologies. Enrud has 15 years of experience in application development for both on-premise cloud-based platforms, and he's proficient in designing and implementing solutions with five nines availability and creating robust analytical systems for customers across all industries. We're so happy to have you here, Enrud.
Sure, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started on today's agenda with our speakers. First, we're going to go over data lake versus data platforms, data platform expectations, key considerations, where most solutions fail, how to avoid pitfalls, and last but not least, the Impetus advantage. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Ayush.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for the quick introduction. Let's get started with today's agenda. First of all, let's try to identify how a data platform differs from a data lake. So if you guys have worked with data in any capacity, so you must be familiar with the concept of data lakes, right? Over the last 2 decades, IT companies have been trying to address the problem of data flooding that's happening inside and outside the organization. You can say that cloud is a new norm, and we have cloud-native data warehouses that can do massive parallel processing. We have frameworks like Spark that can process large volumes of data. The storage has become very cheap. And also we have NoSQL and AI/ML applications that can take care of our analytical needs. But the challenge here is that although these individual pieces of technology have matured, but most enterprises have yet not been able to integrate these tools very well. The result is we have data silos that are often unscalable, contain duplicate and outdated information, logged into proprietary solutions, and they have no single governance layer. So a modern data platform tries to solve these problems. You can refer data platform as an integrated set of technologies that collectively meets an organization's end-to-end data needs. It enables right from ingestion, storage, preparation, delivery, and governance of data. So before building up your data platform, there are a few things which you should keep in mind. First of all, are you building your data platforms for your today's problems, or do you have foresight what new challenges may arise in the next few years? Is your system scalable enough to handle these kind of problems? If not, your system may not scale that properly. Moving to next, are you taking measures to avoid data spam? Because if data platform hosts too much of data in a poorly organized manner without suitable data governance, relevant data becomes very difficult to find, thus resulting in data spams. Next being, are you focused on your business outcomes? Have you defined clear objective, what needs to be achieved? Do we have common user agreement and SLAs defined that what needs to be achieved in what order? Similar to this, next is, are we just building this data platform for few functions? Because this data is going to be internally shared among many organizations. So all the stakeholders should be aligned in terms of what needs to be achieved and in what priority. So do you have the foresight to understand and utilize the full potential of your data platform? And last of all, are you relying solely on your data lake to solve all your enterprise needs? Because we understand that one solution does not fit for all your problems. So you can say data lake can just be a small piece in your data platform, and additionally you may have some near real-time or real-time needs for which you may require to integrate your tools and components like analytical tools, BI tools, NoSQLs, and warehousing solution for your different needs. So by now, we understand and realize that our data platform is necessary to harness the true potential of your data. So instead of building small components in isolation, it's better to auto-wire them through a modern data platform, which can take care of your end-to-end data needs, rather than building all of these small components in isolation. Now let's try to go a bit deep and understand when you're trying to build an ideal data platform, what are its expectations and what are the key considerations while building one. So the primary is that it should not be restricted to being a centralized data repository or centralized location for your structured and unstructured data where you can dump all your data. So it should be able to do more than just storing your data. So it should have support for your source-based systems, for near real-time or real-time systems where you can transform, aggregate, and curate your data, or maybe store in a NoSQL DB or a data warehouse solution, which may further be consumed by your BI tool or any other analytical tool, and or perform analytics on top of your aggregated data. There are so many things which you can do on top of this, rather than just being a centralized storage. In terms of compliance and governance, depending on the use case that you are trying to solve, whether it is in financial or healthcare domain, you may have your data platform be required to follow a lot of data regulations like HIPAA, GDPR, depending on which country your data is stored in. So you may need to encrypt and mask your data in a specific manner, depending on the use case you are trying to build. And above all, I think I just missed, above all, we should have a centralized system to access these isolated components. So we can have a very seamless integration from the start, from the source, up till where the data has been consumed by the end users or end tools. Now let's take a look about key considerations while we are trying to build a data platform. So I think we already talked about this, organization goals. So we should have very clear definition of what objectives which we need to meet, and have all stakeholders aligned to it. So we talked a lot about features that we want to have in the data platform, but to support these features, we should have also support of non-functional requirements as well, such as governance and data cataloging, which could serve as unified layer of governance for your seamless integration. Next, trying to touch base on ROI and TCO. So normally when we hear these terms, they talk about ROI and TCO for the current financial year. But we should have a good projection of upcoming years, say up to 3 years, how your data size is going to increase, what are the new use cases we're trying to onboard, how this will change your revenue, and how this will affect your ROI. Because we have seen that after 2 or 3 years, most people become very undecisive and they try to move from one cloud to other cloud or move to a hybrid system. So if we keep these key considerations in mind, we can avoid those undecisiveness. We must be very focused what exact value we are trying to deliver. It may be you are trying to be very cost effective by moving to a cloud or increase your efficiency, or it may, your business may require that to handle ad hoc values at different times. So whatever the value you're trying to deliver, that should be clearly specified. And sometimes you may need to trade off one value for the another as well. Speed of change refers to how quickly you can onboard new use cases. So suppose you built a data platform for one tenant or one use case, how easily you can build onboard new use cases or new tenants, how many of these processes are automated and made configurable. So it takes less amount of time while you're trying to onboard new use cases. And last but not the least, you should have measures and metrics to have visibility into the current system. You should have metrics about health and performance. It can also be capped with your cost optimization, how many resources are sitting idle, how many are underutilized, what is the right sizing. So by having these measures and metrics, we can avoid and be more cost optimized. So this sums up the key considerations and expectations for a data platform. I'll pass over the ball to Anirudh for further conversation. Anirudh, over to you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Ayush. So far we have discussed the few questions that Ayush walked us through in terms of checking how our approach should be towards implementing our data platform. And in general, in the world today, what is the significance of these platforms? So taking this further, we want to touch upon the reasons of failure of solutions these days. The first and foremost that we come across is data duplicity. So if there are no governance processes and tools in place in terms of onboarding or ingestion of the data into the data platforms, what actually happens is there is duplicate data into the data platform for the same domain, and then the end user or the consumers are kind of confused which one of them is correct and are also not sure of the quality of those. If the access layers are not designed properly and are inefficient to the tune of not being able to cater to downstream systems, which may be further use cases which want to use that data, or end users who can belong to the analytical community and would want to use that data for their further analysis. If our data is not associated with data lifecycle management policies, what we're looking at is an ever-increasing storage onto the platform. And in today's world, when such platforms are realized on the cloud, using the cloud services on the cloud infrastructure, this directly relates to the cost factor as well. Your ever-increasing storage cost would have its toll on your expenditure incurred in maintenance of the solution. A combination of the factors that we spoke of above also yield to another significant scenario, which is lack of end user adoption. That occurs when the users are not sure of the quality, or the users are not sure of the channel with which they can consume the data. And even if the users don't have or don't get to access the data that they are willing to. One of the use cases that we came across in recent past was compliance being an afterthought in the implementation. So what actually happens is adhering to new compliance requirements takes a lot of effort, both in terms of people effort as well as the cost associated with it, because we have to overhaul and relook at the entire implementation from square one to address any nature of compliance needs. Now that we have talked a lot about what are the reasons for the failures and what are the key considerations we should have in place, we want to touch upon a few pointers on how these anti-patterns or pitfalls can be avoided. During the initial few slides, Ayush walked us through the significance of the data platforms these days and how are they different from just the data lake implementations that we have been seeing. So platform encompasses all the periphery services and the needs of the end users as well as the source systems. So you have a channel of data provisioning which the users and other use cases can consume data from. You have a horizontal coverage of the governance systems on the entire platform, and you have a democratized and configurable rule-based ingestion that is being followed. With the new age needs of being able to implement analytical use cases which are AI and ML driven, and being able to project data as a service or provision data as a service, the platform approach, if abided by, kind of gives the solution a holistic view, as well as post the implementation or post the realization, it actually helps realize the true business value that was first intended out of the solution. one should be focused on the business outcomes that are expected of the platform with a very clear mindset. Because a lot of organizations embark on this journey with a first thought of just bringing the data together or bringing all the data to one place with little effort or little thought being put on what eventual business outcomes are being targeted from the platform. The data platform in totality is comprised of various critical components which play their own part and responsibilities. So there should be enough clarity and logical boundaries between these components so that there is no overlap between responsibility of the components, and all of the processes and practices that are expected out of the platform are fully functional and the overall platform works as a well-oiled machine. We talked about this previously as well. If governance is an afterthought, what result it can have. So it should be also as critically thought of as we are selecting the data that has to be brought in and the rest of the capabilities that we want to put out of the platform. Last but not the least, what happens generally, when the users or systems are not able to query or not able to retrieve data basis their latency expectations, they start blaming the volume of data being the reason for it. But hindsight, the actual reason is if the storage has not been properly tiered or partitioned, and if the query mechanisms are not very efficient. So if these things are taken into account, so these are a few that we touched upon, these significant ones, this would yield us, and this would take us to a place where our solutions would look mature and they'll be able to give us maximum business value. So having talked about all of these things, we wanted to walk you through the role that Impetus can play in the realization of these solutions and what are some of the, and we'd want to share the glimpse of some of the work that we've already done so far. So first, we want to touch upon the approach that we take with implementation of cloud data platforms. So the very first focus is what is the actual business value being delivered out of the solution. Almost all organizations set out with a goal of establishing a single source of truth to be able to deliver and create more solutions on top of the data brought in from different business units within the organization. So a clear business value would be delivered if this dream is realized and the newer use cases or the new implementations can be done quickly and with a lot of ease. The platform approach, we talked about this in brief earlier. We want to take this opportunity to highlight the fact that this has to be thought of an entire holistic solution, end to end. From the way data has to be brought in till the way data has to be consumed, and what are the caveats or considerations that need to be in place for the consumption of the data as well, taking into account the security for the data so that only authorized usage can be provisioned, and eventually the various other factors like maintenance and efficient cost management of the solution. Some things that would help on these grounds, we'll talk about this in further slides, is a maturity model that we have in place to do the assessment and take the implementation to a next level, and a few enablers and accelerators that we have which help reduce time to market and deliver solutions very quickly. All this work that we have done is kind of technology agnostic, and the approach and the journey is less reliant on the technology, but more on the logical thinking of the system. So till date, we have been able to help customers realize solutions on majority of the cloud platforms and even offerings from Databricks and Snowflake in this arena. Okay. The first one amongst the accelerator or enabler list we want to talk about is the data platform accelerator. So as the name suggests, this is an offering which helps us to accelerate the speed with which the data lake or platform can be set up on the cloud. So it takes into account on a wizard-based user interface, minimal configurations from the user so that the user does not have to think a lot about the technology aspects of it and has to concentrate only on much on the business needs. It kind of yields the solution which abides by and adheres to the common practices which should be followed and the responsibilities between components which should be taken care of. Also takes care of optimizing various things, including the storage. Having a tiered storage on cloud, every one of us understand, gives us cost optimization. And it also, once the data lake is spun out and running, it kind of gives a dashboard to manage the entire platform as well. It supports today all the three major public cloud providers offerings, and as I talked about, the data lake implementation to the user kind of becomes agnostic to which platform is chosen. He has to rely more on the configurations or parameters that need to be provided, and interacting with the cloud native services for the implementation is the responsibility of this accelerator. As important as it is to create solutions, is to be able to optimally maintain them and keep them operational. So this accelerator that we have helps collate all the related DevOps metrics. It helps measure the DevOps maturity with reference to those metrics collected, gives us inputs on cost optimization and management of the same. Because we have all metrics in one place, it gives an easy access to be able to identify further gaps for improvement. Needless to say, gives customizable dashboards to be able to view these metrics in various formats we want to. Okay. So this, we want to talk about the maturity assessment model. So the approach that we have taken to get this going is picking up the significant components of the data platform, compilation of the best practices and the core responsibilities they should be playing, and then categorizing them across various levels on, say, must-haves and good-to-haves and kind of capabilities of the system. And eventually to the end user, it will not be so tricky. The end user has to take in help of a questionnaire, has to answer those questions, and the responses so captured help us represent and score the platform basis those answers on the various dimensions listed. This is done across three facets, including the platform aspect of it, which is the capability or core technology implementation, the processes aspect of it, on the how part, on how are those policies or practices being implemented, and the people facet to it, which includes the various interactions different personas have to the system and what should be their roles and responsibilities, as well takes into account what end user behavior are they expecting out of the system. So the end result of this is not just a score, but a set of recommendations as well, which helps if a solution is not pretty mature to take it to the next level and solve for any lacunas that exist in the system so that the actual business use cases can be implemented on it with ease. Moving further, we'll just take a few minutes to talk about a few of our engagements with our customers and how the solutions were built and what nature of value have they eventually yielded. So as we talked about, the first and foremost and the most common goal that the organization set out with is enabling a single source of truth. So we helped one of our BFSI customers realize this potential. So they were sitting on huge piles of data, so the solution had to be pretty scalable and performant enough to be able to handle petabytes of data and thousands of feeds coming in on a daily basis. So this was implemented on the AWS platform. This helped the customer kind of transform the insurance domain for its eventual client, for its end clients, which are the organizations belonging to the economies of scale categories, and has kind of reduced the cycle time of any new development by 75%, and has helped the organization also cut down on the OPEX cost by a significant amount. So we all understand how important and time critical is the airline industry, or how important time is for the airline industry. So for one of our customers, we helped them realize this near real-time decision-making capability over their data platform. And so solutions and use cases implemented on this platform, again on AWS, helped them significantly reduce passenger wait times. And again, this solution was configurable and scalable, and it extends very easy onboarding of newer business use cases on top of it. Next one on the list that we have today is is the data platform for the largest credit card organization that we work with. So they are working on a data platform with hundreds of nodes on the cluster on an on-prem system. So they had the requirement of being able to bring in data from disparate sources from the organization belonging to the financial domain. It had its own compliance needs and security needs to be abided for, and the source systems belong to various categories ranging from mainframes to erstwhile DBMS systems and older data warehouse implementation. So complex ingestion pipelines were implemented which have the capability of being monitored on the fly. And with all this data that has been brought in and the capacity of the solution, we have been able to leverage it to implement more than 200 business use cases, including use cases with near real-time capability with sub-second SLAs tied to them. This kind of brings us to the end of what we planned to discuss this morning. We're open for any questions if any one of you have.
Thank you, Anirudh and Ayush. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Julie, just have a couple of questions coming from the chat. Maybe Ayush and I will take them.
Perfect.
First one we have is, what factors can help quick realization of new business use cases across different functions? Okay. So as we talked about, This becomes a lot easier if the alignment process has been dealt with and all business units kind of are working towards a common goal, and the solution has a good level of user acceptance. So any nature of new use cases to be implemented, if the underlying components work through configurations and don't have a lot of hard coding, and the solution is scalable, then it definitely helps a quick turnaround time in terms of the use case implementation, as well as a few accelerators that we talked about would also kind of help a lot in realization of new use cases. Next one that we have is, in one of the slides we talked about near real-time use case development with data platforms. How's that made possible? Okay. So yeah, if we live in the realm of data lake, maybe this kind of appears as a question, but if we talk about data platforms, so these days what has happened is we have real-time ingestion pipelines and offerings being available which can bring in data at speed into the platform. And also, once the data is churned and processed, the provisioning layer kind of can use low latency data stores like SQL databases and Elasticsearch of the world, or even offerings from AWS and GCP like BigQuery or Redshift. So they eventually cut down a lot on the data retrieval times, and hence the near real-time use cases can be driven through the data that is being churned and transformed and curated from the data platform.
One of the other question is, what are the important considerations for cloud implementation on data platform? So when you move to cloud, you can leverage dynamic scalability, and you do not need to worry about your ad hoc requests as well. But the challenge is the cost factor. So you need to keep a tab on how many resources you're utilizing, what is the right sizing of your instance, are your resources being underutilized or idle. So if you can keep that tab, you are good to go.
Okay, I think this is it. Julie, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Enrod and Ayush, and thank you to all of our participants for attending today's session. If you need to get in touch with us, if you'd like more information, please feel free to get in touch with us via email at inquiry@impetus.com. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.